Man, so I'm watching this video from the Sloan channel, and it's pretty bad because I was trying to figure out, wait, Leo DiCaprio name is mentioned in the Epstein files? So it's saying that Epstein had an infatuation with Leo and tried his best to befriend him, even trying to win him over with some big money deals. It's saying Leo sold out to the elites along with his girlfriend, who ended up working with Epstein and sending victims directly to his island. I'll just say allegedly. This is crazy. This is wild. The whole video will be in here for you to watch.
5 minutes ago, the Department of Justice dropped over 3 million pages of records, and buried inside them were 15 new names officially tied to Jeffrey Epstein. Not rumors, not anonymous leaks, federal documents, emails, flight logs, FBI interviews, photos that had never been seen before. And here's what makes this different. Some of these names were expected, but others? One asked to borrow Epstein's private jet for a charity gala. Another emailed him asking what night would be the wildest party on his island. One appears in nearly 300 references across files, still in contact years after his conviction. A former president shows up in newly released photographs. A tech billionaire exchanged island plans in writing. A global supermodel's name appears hundreds of times. A royal family connection now faces active review. And before anyone jumps to conclusions, being named in these files does not automatically mean someone committed a crime. But the proximity, the timing, and the patterns are raising serious questions. Because this isn't social media speculation. These are DOJ records. Some entries are thin, a single email mention. Others are layered with correspondence, travel discussions, and behind-the-scenes communications that are hard to ignore. The media will focus on a few predictable headlines. But today we're going through all 15. What the documents actually say, what's confirmed, what's alleged, and how each person has responded. No noise, no exaggeration. Just what's in the files. And why it matters right now. Before we start running through the 15 names one by one, you need to understand what just happened. Because without context, a name is just a headline. In February 2026, the Department of Justice released more than 3 million pages tied to Jeffrey Epstein investigations. That includes emails, flight logs, FBI interview transcripts, contact books, financial records, photos, and internal memos. Some documents are razor-thin, literally just a name in an index or a press clipping saved in an inbox. Others contain direct email exchanges, travel planning discussions, or witness statements. And here's the critical part. Being named in these files does not automatically mean someone committed a crime. Some individuals appear because Epstein archived articles about them. Others show up because someone else mentioned them in an email. But in certain cases, the paper trail is more extensive. Repeated communication, travel coordination, social invitations, or references in investigative interviews. What makes this drop explosive isn't just the number of pages. It's the timing. Many of these names were previously redacted or buried inside heavily blacked-out sections. Now, with more material unsealed, patterns are becoming visible. Who stayed in contact after Epstein's 2008 conviction, who traveled on his jet, who corresponded about island visits, who was name-dropped as social leverage. And again, context matters. Epstein was known to exaggerate his influence. He often used famous names to elevate his own status. In some cases, emails show him bragging about connections that may not have been mutual or even real. So separating documented contact from ego-driven claims is essential. And another key point, some of these connections date back to the early 2000s, before the full scope of Epstein's crimes became widely known. Others occurred years after his first conviction. And that's where public scrutiny intensifies. Why maintain contact after 2008? Why continue correspondence after headlines made clear what he had pleaded guilty to? For some, the answer appears to be ignorance, poor judgment, or professional overlap. For others, the paper trail invites harder questions. This document release doesn't function like a courtroom verdict. It's not a list of charges. It's a map of proximity. And proximity, especially around a convicted sex offender operating at elite levels of power, is enough to trigger public outrage, even when criminal wrongdoing isn't established. So as we go through these 15 names, the goal is clarity, not speculation. What do the documents actually show? How extensive is each connection? Was it a single email, a flight, a photograph, a financial tie? And how has each person responded now that their name is back in headlines? Because once you separate rumor from record, the story becomes less about internet frenzy and more about how deeply Epstein embedded himself into global influence networks. Let's start with the names that exploded online almost immediately, not necessarily because the files were devastating, but because the internet filled in the blanks faster than the documents did. Ellen DeGeneres appears in the DOJ index. That's it. Her name was included among hundreds of public figures whose press clippings Epstein had archived. No verified flight logs, no confirmed meetings in the released documents. A viral flight log circulating online that claimed she was on the Lolita Express was later shown to be fabricated. The files themselves do not show evidence of criminal activity connected to her. But once a name appears in a federal release, nuance disappears, and headlines take over. Then there's Naomi Campbell, and this one carries more weight. Her name reportedly appears nearly 300 times across emails, logs, and transcripts. That doesn't automatically equal wrongdoing, but it does signal repeated contact. Emails show she was still in communication with Epstein years after his 2008 conviction. Her legal team has stated she never witnessed illegal activity and was unaware of the full scope of his crimes until much later. However, investigative transcripts suggest Epstein may have used her name when recruiting young women, allegedly promising modeling introductions. There is no public evidence showing she knowingly participated in criminal conduct. But the documented proximity raises questions that are harder to dismiss. Bill Clinton's connection is not new, but the 2026 release added more detail. Confirmed flight logs show he flew on Epstein's jet multiple times in the early 2000s. Newly surfaced photographs place him at Epstein-associated properties. Clinton's representatives maintain that all travel was related to foundation work and that he had no knowledge of criminal behavior. There is no public evidence in these files proving he participated in illegal acts. But the sheer frequency of travel and social overlap ensures the scrutiny doesn't fade. Now here's where context matters heavily. Pope John Paul II's name surfaced because Epstein and Maxwell attended a public Vatican audience in 2003 and obtained a photo. There is no evidence of a personal relationship. Claims that Epstein lived at the Vatican have been debunked. This appears to be an example of Epstein collecting photographs with powerful figures, something investigators say he frequently did to elevate his image. Then comes Stephen Hawking, whose name appears over 200 times in documents related primarily to scientific conferences funded by Epstein. One widely circulated allegation about him attending inappropriate events has never been substantiated. In fact, emails suggest Epstein attempted to shut down those rumors. The confirmed record shows professional overlap tied to academic events. There is no verified evidence linking Hawking to criminal misconduct. This is where the first twist begins to take shape. The list isn't a clean split between innocent and guilty. It's layered. Some names appear because Epstein obsessively archived influence. Some reflect social proximity. Some show repeated communication that continued even after his conviction. And the public reaction doesn't differentiate between those categories. It compresses them into one explosive headline. But now we move into entries where the documentation becomes more active. Travel, planning, emails that go beyond passive mention. And that's where the temperature starts rising. Now we move into the names where the documentation becomes more direct. Not just archived mentions, but confirmed travel, active communication, and invitations that raise harder questions. Kevin Spacey appears in connection to a 2002 humanitarian trip to Africa aboard Epstein's private jet. Also on that trip were Bill Clinton and Chris Tucker. The stated purpose was Clinton Foundation work related to HIV/AIDS awareness. Spacey has publicly stated that he found Epstein suspicious and distanced himself. FBI interview transcripts note that young women were present on certain flights. There is no verified evidence in the released documents proving Spacey participated in criminal conduct during that trip. But the presence of underage individuals on Epstein-associated flights is part of what keeps this entry under scrutiny. Chris Tucker's involvement centers almost entirely on that same 2002 trip. DOJ records do not show confirmed travel by Tucker to Little St. James. His team has maintained he had no relationship with Epstein beyond that single journey. However, newly released images reportedly show him on tarmacs and at dinners connected to that travel period. Again, proximity, not proof of wrongdoing, but proximity in this context carries weight. Then we get to Elon Musk, and this entry is one of the more layered ones. Emails from 2012 to 2014 show correspondence between Epstein and Musk, including an exchange where Musk asked what night would be the wildest party on Epstein's island. Musk has publicly stated he declined island invitations and regrets engaging with Epstein socially. There are no confirmed flight logs placing Musk on Little St. James in the released records. However, the email trail confirms discussion of potential visits and business-related interactions, as including a SpaceX facility visit. That doesn't establish criminal activity. But it confirms engagement beyond a passing acquaintance. Leonardo DiCaprio's file appears significantly thinner. His name surfaces primarily in emails where Epstein referenced him socially or used his name in conversations. DiCaprio's representatives have stated he never met or communicated with Epstein. No flight logs or property visits linked to him have been confirmed in the DOJ release. This appears to be a case of Epstein leveraging celebrity names to enhance his perceived status. Now comes a legally embedded name, Alan Dershowitz. Unlike others, his relationship with Epstein was professional. He served as Epstein's attorney and helped negotiate the controversial 2008 non-prosecution agreement. His name appears frequently in the files because of that legal work. He has consistently denied all allegations of sexual misconduct and has publicly called for full document transparency. Some accusations have been withdrawn or contested. His entry reflects formal legal representation rather than social proximity. But given the nature of the plea deal he helped negotiate, scrutiny remains intense. Then there's Peter Attia, a longevity physician whose emails with Epstein included language that many consider inappropriate or troubling in hindsight. Attia has stated he never witnessed illegal activity and was naive about Epstein's crimes until years later. His professional collaborations appear related to health discussions and introductions. However, certain email phrasing has drawn criticism and led to professional fallout, when including media appearances being pulled. Here's the second twist emerging. The pattern isn't consistent. Some individuals were clients, some were travelers, some were legal advisors, some were social contacts. Some may have been used as status symbols without their full awareness. But the connective thread is that Epstein embedded himself into elite ecosystems: politics, entertainment, science, finance, royalty, tech. And now we move into the final cluster, where the political and royal implications intensify significantly. Now we reach the final group, and this is where institutional pressure becomes impossible to ignore. Whoopi Goldberg's appearance in the files stems from a 2013 email in which someone inquired about borrowing Epstein's private jet for a charity event connected to Julian Lennon's foundation. Epstein declined, There are no confirmed flight logs placing her on his aircraft, and no evidence in the documents showing a personal relationship. Goldberg addressed it publicly, stating she was not his friend and never flew with him. Her entry appears transactional and brief, but once again, once a name appears in DOJ records, context gets lost in the headline. Joe Rogan's presence in the files is almost ironic. Emails show Epstein attempting to secure an introduction to Rogan through physicist Lawrence Krauss in 2017. Rogan declined after researching Epstein. There is no record of them meeting, communicating directly, or traveling together. Rogan has openly discussed this on his podcast, framing it as proof he avoided the connection entirely. His inclusion reflects an attempted introduction, not a relationship. And then we arrive at the most scrutinized entry on this entire list, Prince Andrew. Unlike many others, his association with Epstein has been documented for years. The 2026 files reportedly include additional photographs and emails suggesting continued communication even after Andrew publicly claimed he had cut ties. Allegations from Virginia Giuffre, which Andrew has denied, previously resulted in a civil settlement without admission of liability. The newly released material includes discussions tied to his time as a UK trade envoy, raising questions about whether sensitive briefings were shared inappropriately. UK authorities have reportedly reviewed aspects of this connection. Buckingham Palace has stated it would cooperate with any investigation. Unlike thin entries or single email mentions, Andrew's connection represents sustained social proximity that continued after Epstein's conviction. And that's why this name remains at the center of public focus. Closely linked is Sarah Ferguson, whose emails from 2009 to 2010 show personal appeals to Epstein during a period of financial difficulty. Records suggest he assisted her financially. She has publicly expressed regret over the association. There is no publicly confirmed evidence in the files proving she participated in criminal activity. But the optics of financial dependence on a convicted offender after 2008 are difficult to reconcile. And that's the third and biggest twist of this release. The 15 names are not equal. Some reflect archived press mentions. Some reflect brief contact. Some reflect professional relationships. Some reflect repeated post-conviction communication. But what unites them isn't proof of shared criminal behavior. It's access. Epstein had access to presidents, royals, billionaires, scientists, comedians, models, media figures, and financiers. Some distanced themselves early, some didn't. Some may have been unaware of the scope of his crimes. Others continued engagement long after warning signs were public. The files don't read like a clean indictment list. They read like a social map of power. And that leaves one uncomfortable question lingering over all 15 names. How did a convicted sex offender remain socially, financially, and politically embedded for so long? After going through all 15 names, one thing becomes clear. This is not a clean story with a single villain and a neatly defined circle of accomplices. It's messy, it's layered, and most importantly, it exposes how proximity to power works. Some of the names we covered appear only once: an archived article, a declined jet request, a casual mention in an email thread. Others show repeated communication, confirmed flights, event invitations, and sustained access even after Epstein's 2008 conviction. That distinction matters. But what matters even more is the pattern underneath. Epstein didn't just socialize, he positioned himself. He funded scientific conferences, he donated to political campaigns, he hosted private dinners, he facilitated introductions between billionaires, royalty, academics, and media figures. He made himself useful. And in elite circles, usefulness often outweighs reputation, until it doesn't. That's the final twist. The shock isn't just that 15 new names surfaced. The shock is how normal many of these interactions look on paper. A jet ride for a foundation trip, a modeling introduction, a dinner invite, a legal retainer agreement, a business inquiry, a charity flight request. Individually, each one can be explained, contextualized, defended. But collectively, they reveal something much bigger. A man convicted of exploiting minors was still able to operate within elite networks for years. Not underground, in plain sight. And that's why this document drop feels different. It doesn't function like a courtroom verdict. It functions like a transparency test. The DOJ released millions of pages, but even now portions remain redacted. Lawmakers continue pushing for full disclosure. Some public figures are demanding every document be unsealed. Others are remaining quiet. Because once you zoom out, the question shifts. This isn't just about who flew where. It's about how influence shields itself. If Epstein was able to maintain contact across politics, finance, entertainment, royalty, science, and tech, even after conviction, what does that say about how elite ecosystems operate? Was he uniquely manipulative? Or was he simply exploiting a system that already rewards discretion, access, and status? That's the cliffhanger. Because this list may not be the end. More files could surface. More redactions could be lifted. More names could appear. Or more context could clear some of the ones already listed. But one thing is certain. The public appetite for transparency isn't fading. So now I want to hear from you. Which name surprised you the most and why? Do you think proximity alone deserves scrutiny? Or only proven criminal conduct? And if full, unredacted transparency happened tomorrow, what do you think it would reveal about how power really moves behind the scenes? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you want updates the moment new documents are released, make sure you're subscribed and notifications are on. Because if this release proved anything, it's that the story isn't finished. And the next drop could change everything again.